And Stuart, for BZ 2007, there's an error in the staff report I'd like to correct before we go to a vote for that, if that's all right.
Yeah, I saw your message on that.
Okay.
Yeah, I was wondering about that because I read what you had in there and it looked like, this looks like planning commission.
Yeah, it's a little different. It has some information, but a little different.
So Andrew, looking at the list, did we hear from Greg McIlvaine?
We did not. I thought he was going to be here this month. There is someone on a call. I'm not sure they're not responding, but there's someone in here on the line.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Pete Prosser.
Oh, okay.
He's connected with mine.
Okay. He's down there.
Okay, so based on right now, based on looking at the screen, it looks like we have 5 present. So we do have a quorum.
How do I get everybody on the screen at once?
At the
Go
left,
to the upper right corner of your screen
Yes.
and hit gallery view.
or upper left, either one, wherever it is.
Okay, I don't see that anywhere. Let me try again.
Varies with device and operating system. It's not always the same.
Okay, well, I'm just on my phone, so maybe not.
Oh, if you're on your phone, you're going to be limited into how many you can see.
Okay, that's all right. When somebody talks, they come up, so that's all right. I see Doug Druschel most of the time when nobody's talking, so.
You're just lucky.
Yes.
Stuart, if you want to give Greg a couple minutes, I can read a little bit of an intro just to kind of go over the format of the meeting. That's all right.
Okay, yeah, that's fine, Andrew. Let's do that. It's 7:30, so we should be timely out of respect for everybody who's here.
First off, I'd like to thank all of you for making accommodations to attend this meeting. Before I hand it off back to the board's chair, Stuart Fitzgibbon, I'd like to go over a few things. The format of this meeting consists of board members and applicants attending a live online Zoom meeting. Looks like we have 5 members of the board here for a quorum. For applicants, please only speak when the chair indicates it's time to do so. For example, you may ask if anyone is present to speak for an application, and that's when you should address the board. In addition, as usual, prior to addressing the board, please state your name, address, and affirm to tell the truth. This meeting is also streaming live on the city's YouTube channel. Looks like we have 5 people watching right now. Viewers on YouTube have the ability to enter in comments. If you enter in a comment on YouTube, please first indicate your name and address. Comments can be entered at any time, but I'll relay the comments to the board when the chair indicates that it's time to do so during the public hearing for each agenda item. Please also be aware there's approximately a 15-second delay between the Zoom meeting and the live stream on YouTube. So that's all I have, and I'll turn it over to Stuart to start the meeting.
Thank you, Andrew. This is the regularly scheduled May meeting of the Worcester Board of Building and Zoning Appeals. This is a volunteer board of Worcester citizens established to hear requests for variances appeals, and similar applications as specified in the City of Worcester Planning and Zoning Code. Board members present this evening are Brad Gowans, Doug McMillan, Ken Suchan, Mark Reynolds, and I am Stuart Fitzgibbon, chairman of this board. Because these hearings are a matter of legal record, the public portion of the meeting is recorded. Therefore, we ask that if and when you speak, please speak loudly and clearly. We also ask that prior to speaking, each speaker gives his or her name, address, and affirmation to tell the truth. Following the meeting, the appellant for each application will receive notification of the board's decision. The applications to be considered tonight are applications 2006, 2007, and 2008. I'll begin our agenda by roll call. Brad?
Here.
Greg is not here. Doug?
Here.
Ken?
Here.
Mark?
Here.
And I too am here. Our next agenda item is approval of the March 5th meeting minutes. Are there any comments, corrections? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, that was first by Brad, and who was the second?
Ken.
Ken, thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, like sign. Okay, the minutes are approved. Our first application this evening is application 2006. Is there someone here to speak on behalf of this application?
Yes, this is Doug Druschel, 225 North Market Street, and I affirm to tell the truth. Presenting this on behalf of Timothy Enterprises as the landowner, which is an affiliate of the Nagy's business that operates the car repair business in question. The site in question is zoned I-1 and the use in question is permitted use. This has already been through Planning Commission and everything is good to go with the exception of this one variance, which we're requesting tonight. Should be a very nice project. The key thing to keep in mind here is the location of the property at the corner of Long Road and Akron Road. And there's a larger parcel that's divided into two, and the building in question will be on the northernmost property or a portion of that property, leaving the southern portion to be developed later. The southern portion of the property at the very corner of Long Road and Akron Road has the benefit of being at a corner, but the disadvantage of not being able to use that corner at all, because on the Long Road, on the Akron Road side, you have an ODOT issue of curb cuts. And on the Long Road side, it's too close to the traffic light that's there. And the city engineer has said, please don't put in a driveway anywhere on that property that would connect with Long Road because it would interfere with the traffic at the traffic light there. I'm sure you're all familiar with the general rule that traffic engineers don't like driveways very close to traffic lights. And so basically we're here in a sense at the city engineer's request, because the city engineer said, please don't do that, but instead to access that southern portion of the property, please connect off of Akron Road in the northernmost portion of the property, come in to the west with a driveway, and then turn that driveway south at what you might consider the rear of the property, the easternmost portion of the property, where the driveway would then go north and south and run down to the southern portion of the property. And so that's why we're here, is to facilitate that request from the city engineer. And later in the presentation, our engineer, John Long, will talk about that also and give us a little more authoritative engineering statement than I can give you. The fact of the unique aspect of not being able to get out onto Long Road is what makes this, in my view, kind of a prototype of an area variance request. It is a unique feature of this property. Thus, if you look at the first test of the various portions of the code, which are set forth the test for a variance, says whether special conditions and circumstances exist which are peculiar to the land or structures involved, generally not applicable to other lands or structures in the same zoning district. As I say, this is a prototype. I mean, I think if you were teaching a course on variances, this would be an example of one you would use for when the variance is appropriate because of that unique feature of the access there. The second test, whether the property will yield a reasonable return or any beneficial use without the variance. Well, the southern portion of the property couldn't be used at all without this variance because it would literally have no access. So I think we've met that test. Whether the next test, whether the variance is substantial and the minimum necessary to make possible reasonable use of the land. I think this is clearly the minimum. It's really, if you look at it, the average person is going to consider this outdoor storage area to be in the rear yard because the building is going to be facing north. And this will be on the south side of the building. And I don't think the average person would say, hey, why is that in the side yard? I think they would say, yeah, it's in the rear yard. It's only because the technicalities of the code that say, well, the front is supposed to be the part along the major road, which is Akron Road. And so in a sense, it's in the rear, but I would think you could make a pretty good case. It's really not the rear if it were on that side. Where it will be is what the average person would consider the rear. Next, whether the variance would adversely affect delivery of governmental services. Of course not, zero impact there. F is whether the special conditions or circumstances exist as a result of actions of the owner. No, they don't. We didn't put Long Road in there. Whether the predicament can be obviated through some other means. I don't know of any other means to do this. H, whether the spirit and intent behind the zoning requirement would be observed and substantial justice done. I think this is clearly within the spirit of the zoning code. Whether the granting of the variance would confer on the applicant special privilege denied to other lands. No, this is unique to this property. And the last, whether a literal interpretation of the provisions would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by others. I think the answer to that is yes. The average owner is allowed access to a road, and the southern portion of this property would not be allowed access with a literal interpretation. So with that, unless you have other questions for me, I would like to turn it over to John Long, engineer Schaefer Johnston, to talk a little bit about the engineering aspects of this project.
Good evening, John Long. My mailing address is 3477 Commerce Parkway, Worcester, Ohio, Suite C. And I affirm to tell the truth. As we started this project many months ago, had a conversation with Roger Kobylarczyk about access. The conversation revolved around aligning the access point to this parcel and these two parcels with the existing road, which is Peach Lane, I believe, across Akron Road. With the turn lanes on Long Road, there was no possibility of accessing at that location, as Doug has indicated. The rest of the frontage along Akron Road, it just doesn't make good access management and sense to have a new driveway and another decision point along that portion of the road, as opposed to aligning it with Peach Lane. As such, with the irregular shape of this particular parcel kind of being pie-shaped as you go towards the north, we were unable to bring the driveway in such that it could swing in front or the west side of the buildings. That the turning radius of that would be too great to allow for easy access of any type of deliveries that may be taking place who are here as far as like parts for the collision business, or even bringing the records and so forth in for the repairing cars. As such, the drive was to be extended to the south along the east property line to the southern portion. And as we were going through the design, if we were to put the fenced storage area on the east side of the building in the rear yard, it would actually be more obtrusive and more in view than the location which we have put it. So that's kind of gives you a little background and a little the reasoning as to why we have the driveway and the configuration which we do. So I'll turn it back over to Doug at this point, unless someone has questions for me.
Okay, next we have Dan and Ron Nagy both on the call here. If one or both of them would just like to say a few words about the gist of what their plan is here for the property and anything else they'd like to say.
Yeah, I'll
Your
start.
audio broke up just a bit. Who besides Dan Nagy is here?
Ron Nagy.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start. This is Ron Nagy. My mailing address is 18488 Grill Road, and firm to tell the truth. Really, we picked this property. We need a bigger building for the southern. We do own a couple properties in Worcester there, mostly under the Timothy property name, Timothy Enterprises. But we needed a bigger building than what we had in the southern shop. And when we partnered with Caliber Collision, that I think most of you are aware of, they encouraged us to find one kind of on the east side. They like that area. So when we found that property, we chose that, and appreciate all that John's done to draw this up and lay everything out. As he said, we're trying to place that building in such a way where we need a tow-in area, mostly secure. So when vehicles are towed in, they're in a secure lot. At the same time, anybody who knows about our business knows that we work very closely with the insurance industry. They're our business partners, and they don't like cars sitting around, and we don't like cars sitting around because nobody makes money and customers are not happy. So therefore, most of the time they are outside maybe for 24, 48 hours before they're processed. And at that point, they're either repaired or towed out. So we have to have the fenced in lot, obviously, for security, for aesthetics. The building itself, we're investing a lot of money in that because a lot of the buildings in that area are some very nice looking buildings. We want to build the same thing. They designed a very nice building for us. We're pretty excited to get started on it. So I'd open it up because I don't know what questions you guys may have for us. And Dan, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
No, the only thing I would add is that Dan Nagy, 4262 Eastern Road, Doylestown, firm to tell the truth. That we just want to carry on the tradition that our dad started, and we want good looking locations and really to serve the community in automotive repair. Just to reaffirm something Ron said was the cycling of the cars through. On average, cars are at the body shop at the most about 15 days, but normally it's about 6 days. So when I see storage, and I think some people think it's going to be like a junkyard, but it's not. It's just temporary storage for the cars while they're being repaired. So any questions, I will try to answer too.
All right, I guess turning it back to members of the board, are there any questions from members of the board for any of the people who have spoken?
So the area there designated only for non-operating cars. The rest of the vehicles will be parked in the parking spaces. Is that correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, so really the only question is whether those non-operating cars are technically in the rear yard or side yard, or what would appear to be a rear yard.
Correct.
That's correct. The only issue here is whether the outdoor storage is on one side of the building or the other. Either place it would be fenced in, either place all the other code requirements would apply. So this is just putting it to the south side of the building because the driveway is going to be on the east side of the building for the reasons that Mr. Long outlined.
Right. But the building will hide it from anybody's view. especially anybody to the north. I know we had a letter from property owner to the north that basically thought it would look bad, but they can't even see it.
Well, I should add too, John Barrington wrote that letter for Ed Howman, who owns the property to the north.
Yes.
And I sent an email to John. I said, John, all we're talking about here is where this outdoor storage is. And I said, if it were in the so-called rear yard, it would be visible to Mr. Howman's property. If it's where we're talking about, it would not be visible to Mr. Howman's property. John checked with Mr. Howman. He said, yeah, you're right. We withdraw the letter. I don't know if he actually sent in the withdrawal to the city or not, but that's what he told me.
Okay, well, I was wondering at that question because I had the same reading of it, that he's to the north of the property, and his concern, other than just the general aesthetics, didn't make any sense.
Right. I think he was confused over what was really being proposed.
Yeah, I guess
Sorry, I received the letter and I responded back to Mr. Barrington as well and gave him a copy of the site plan. I did not hear back from him. It was about a week or so ago. So he didn't get back to me.
Yeah, I guess the question I would ask, and I guess this has already been through planning commission, so it's moot for us, but just to address the general aesthetic question, what is the screening of the storage lot?
I would ask John or one of the.
And I'm going to answer, and if I'm misspeaking, Ron, Dan, or Pete, correct me, but I believe what we're proposing is a chain link fence with nylon fill strips. So it would be not visible to look through it. Does that sound right, Pete?
Correct. That's correct.
Okay.
Pete
Yeah.
Prosser, that's on the line there, in case anybody's wondering, is the builder for the project.
And I guess, John Long, a question for you. The road access, I know the request was made by the city engineer to have the driveway access at Peach Lane. Is that a state legal requirement, or what drives that decision in terms of where that road cut can be?
Well, it's not necessarily a state legal question. But it was a request from the city engineer from a access management perspective, and that is every time you have a curb cut on the roadway, you have a decision point for the motoring traffic, for the motoring public. If you align two driveways across the road from each other, it's still just one decision point. Whereas if we were to move that driveway south, say 200 feet, then that would actually take it from one decision point for Peach Lane to two, one for Peach Lane and one for our driveway. You align them and it's one decision point for Peach Lane and our driveway total. So it's a request and it's more of an access management type of situation. So it makes good engineering sense.
Yeah, more of a common sense criteria than a legal one.
Yeah, he probably does have some legal standing to challenge us if we were to put it in a different location, but we were inclined to comply with his request.
Always understood it to be a safety issue, basically, because say if somebody's driving out of that driveway, if they're matching up with Peach Lane, they can see if somebody's coming out of Peach Lane pretty easily. And somebody driving on 585 can look at and basically see both sides at the same time.
It's a good point for visibility as well for the traffic coming in and out of our site. It's a good site distance north and south, so it's good for the motoring public on the main roadway too.
Okay, are there other questions from the board? All right, hearing none. Is there anyone else on the call that wants to speak for or against this application?
Stuart, are you opening up the public hearing or?
Yes, so this is the public portion of the hearing. So is there anybody on YouTube that wants to comment?
And I have not received a comment yet. There is a bit of a delay, and then they're going to have to input it, and I'm going to have to get back to you. So
Right, so
we might
we'll
want to give it a minute here.
pause.
And I did indicate I would read the letter into the record that we received, whether it's still valid or not. I'm not sure from Mr. Hellman. But the letter is, just to advise you that I represent Edward Hellman, the owner of permanent number 67-0203.014, located at 1660 Enterprise Parkway. My client was given notice of the hearing on application BZA 2006 for variance of planning and zoning code section 1109.03 D5C to allow storage of non-operational vehicles in the side yard of permanent parcel number 67-00283.001, which is within 200 feet of my client's property. This is a very upscale, neat-looking office and limited industrial area. The owners and occupiers of these properties take great effort to maintain the park-like pristine appearance of the area. Having what amounts to a mini junkyard developed in the side lot of permanent parcel number 67-00283.001 will detract considerably from the appearance of the neighborhood and will change the basic look and character of this area. Accordingly, my client is strongly opposed to the granting of the application and asked the Board of Building and Zoning Appeals to deny the variance and prevent the deterioration to the Enterprise Parkway area, which is likely to flow from this reduction of standards. Respectfully yours, John Barrington.
Just so the record's complete, the email that I referenced earlier that I'd sent to John, and he responded yesterday. I'll just read it here. It says, "Dear Doug, I thank you for your explanation of this. I have reviewed it with Ed and he has no problem with your request. I shall advise the city that he withdraws his objection. Thanks, John."
That may be the case, but he never replied back to me.
Understand.
And also, I don't have any other comments from the YouTube channel after reading that. So I don't think there's any comments from the public.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Any further questions from the board? All right, if not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve this as presented.
Okay,
I'll second
motion by Brad and second by,
Doug?
By
thank you,
Doug.
Doug. All right, so a motion on the table, voting in the affirmative regarding BZA 2006. Let's see. Ken, we'll start with you.
I vote yes. The primary reasons being that I think this, in effect, is the rear of the building. So the rear of the least obtrusive area you could put the storage of non-operational vehicles, and they are properly screened. So I think it fulfills all the requirements of an exception based on the peculiarity of the lot.
Okay, thank you, Ken. Brad?
I too am going to vote yes, and my thoughts are much similar to Ken's, but I'll just cite specifically review criteria letter A. Again, that special conditions and circumstances exist to the land. We've heard about those with how the land is shaped, how this parcel is shaped, and the uniqueness of the roads and what they must work around. So for those reasons, I'm voting yes.
Thank you, Brad. Doug?
Yeah, I'm voting yes. I see the necessity to have the road to the second property. And due to that, I see it as the side or the rear lot. And I think yes.
Okay, Mark?
I'll also vote yes for some of the same reasons that my fellow board members have stated. I think with the layout of the parcel and with the access road needed to the south property, that this is the best use of the land.
Okay, thank you, Mark. I too will vote yes for all of the reasons cited by my colleagues on the board. So 2006 is approved.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, gentlemen.
I'd like to note that my partner, Eric Mishner, has the third one, so it'll show up on the screen with my initials, but it won't be me.
All right, thank you, Doug. All right, next up, we have BZA 2007. Is there anyone here to speak on behalf of this application?
Alex, you going to take the lead on this?
And can I maybe, where are some deficiencies in the staff report? If I could just go over a couple of things just to make some clarifications. So we're on the same page what the application is.
Sure, go ahead, Andrew.
So there's two types of variances in this application. The use variance application for the two proposed uses. The section 1135 02 defines printing and publishing as an establishment engaged in the printing and or publishing of newspapers, books, periodicals, magazines, as well as record pressing and publishing, and it kind of goes on in that vein. And warehousing, which is a business establishment primarily engaged in the storage of merchandise, goods, and materials, not including self-storage facilities, excuse me. So section 1109.02D indicates all permitted with standards, conditional, and prohibited uses found in the use table, which is 1109-01. Printing and publishing and warehouse uses are prohibited in the subject C2 zoning district. And also we usually give you some recent related variances. Similar variance 2016. Paul Summers of Hartzler Dairy requested a use variance in section 1131.02 to allow manufacturing use at 532 Road in the C5 district. That was unanimously approved by the board at the time. And then the second variances are area variances. One was in section 1115.04A, minimum site development standards. And this requirement is that properties in the C2 zoning district have a maximum front yard setback of 40 feet. The proposed building is set back 205 feet from the right of way. Also, section 1119.05E2 states that 25% of the front facade of a building in the C2 district must be transparent doors or windows. Due to the architecture and use of the building, we come up with approximately 6.5% of the front facade, which is transparent doors or windows, and that would be pretty much all the area below the roof line there. And that's a relatively new standard, so there are not any recent related variances. So those are just a couple of things that we left out of the staff report that I wanted to relate, so we're on the same page of what exactly the variances are.
All right, thank you, Andrew.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, may I address the board?
Yes.
Well, good evening, gentlemen. I'm Brent Eicher, certified Angus beef, 206 Riffle Road, and I too affirm tell the truth tonight. Maybe just to set the stage a little bit for this project, it's as I shared with the Planning Commission, it's a unique project to describe because there's a couple different functions going on in this building, and the one specifically I think is probably this print shop and or warehouse. Today, that warehouse function is what's occurring across the street in the little building that sits between our main office building and culinary center. That's about a 5,000 square foot building. We see about a truck or two on average a week, maybe as many as 3. Not all of those are semis. And so it's really a fairly low use, but we are storing printed materials as well as some consumer goods and things of that nature in the proposed site. The other thing that the site will incorporate is what we've called a printing area. That's probably a misnomer. It's more of a large room that contains digital copiers. I mean, this is not presses that you would see at a large printing company. They're really just fairly sophisticated copiers that allow us to print some of our merchandising materials in-house and respond to our customers much quicker. And again, that space is large enough for basically 2 to 3 of these large printing units. The other thing that would occur in this facility is a small area, I call it a shop, a workshop. We have 2 full-time facility staff that sometimes are constructing things, or repairing things. Today, they're doing that in the hallways of our office. And this would give them a dedicated shop area where they could maintain their tools and supplies. And again, it would all be within. So that's the functions that were being proposed in this building. I think the other thing that finds it kind of unique is those of you that are familiar with Certified Angus Beef are aware that we are absolutely a marketing company based around high quality beef, and how we present ourselves is very important from a marketing standpoint. And so if you were to look at what we refer to as our campus or headquarters today along Riffle, it's that campus-like look. And our goals here, even though we're calling this a print room / warehouse, the goal would be to have a facility that looks much the same, with the difference of we've kind of given it a barn theme. And I think all of you have in the proposal a colored drawing or rendering that Mr. Alex has put together here for us, just to give us, it's not an architectural, I'm sure John cringes when he sees these kinds of things, but it's meant to be a scaled model of what this might look like from a color and presentation. Again, our goal here is to stay very much in line with our marketing theme, as well as to really tie into both Wayne County and Certified Angus Beef and its agricultural roots. And so instead of just building a big old rectangular building with a flat roof like a Ford Motor might, we've taken the opportunity to build it and basically make it look like a barn. That would be or absolutely nothing. It's basically marketing, and it may serve as a small museum or meeting space, an entryway, similar to the historical society down across from the fairground that has thank you. Yes, that's awesome. If you want to click on the color one there, that really, I think, does it a nice job. Thank you so much. There you go. So you can just see that silo, I think, was mocked up somewhere around 18 feet across. So it's not a small silo, but it definitely would have the feel, as you see there in the picture, of that being a barn. It would have one loading dock. As I mentioned, we would have very little truck traffic. Maybe one delivery a day, 2 at the most, probably. We operate only one shift, 8 to 5, and we would not see that changing. One of the other things that the site, from a functional standpoint, you'll notice that the parking is put in the front. And the main reason for that is that, one, the barn just sits better on the site. It's much flatter towards the back. You can see in the topography there that the building sits on a much flatter piece of ground. The lot is wider at the back, so it accommodates the building even better. And some of that parking is literally to support the main office building across the street. As we continue to develop that site, we are at our maximum. And as we continue to want to hire and add staff and grow the company, parking is an issue. We are up against the limit. And so this would add approximately an additional 60 parking spaces beyond what is needed for the new building, that would give us some of that overflow that we could use with a crosswalk and so forth over to here. If you notice in the front, before the parking, that round area, that is meant to be a water retention pond. Thank you. Highly landscaped. We've even talked that, maybe we put some swans in there, some nice shrubbery, landscaping, and again, give it a very agricultural look to buffer both the street and the parking area, with then the barn and the silo really being the structure that you would see. And so that has a lot to do with how the building is placed on the site, and creates one of the variances where it's set back. It kind of makes no sense to put the building clear to the front and then have staff walking from the back of the property to the front in order to get to their office building and walking around the warehouse. You'll also know that it has a loop drive, and that is to eliminate some of the traffic concerns where trucks today are having to back up on Riffle onto the current property to unload. This would allow them a pull-through situation where they could make the circle back right into the one dock that's there on the west side of the building, unload and pull straight out, and really be a minimal, from a traffic standpoint, be a minimal disruption, if at all. The other thing that we would do along that tree line, our neighbors at Hunter's Chase have been wonderful neighbors. We hope that we've been good neighbors as well. And so we would propose that along that property where it joins with theirs, to do some pretty significant landscaping, whether it be trees, whether it be some raised earth, to create some mounds and really just create a very, again, kind of that country agricultural feel along that property line that would obstruct most, if not all, of their view to parking or to the side of the building there. We really feel like our proposed design and site and placement, really anything, is a nice buffer to those residents. What potentially from a commercial zoning standpoint could go in there, probably require no variances, but we would argue that our proposed design is actually, I think, going to be a nicer buffer to the neighborhood than what maybe a commercial establishment that doesn't need a use variance, that might put their building to the front, but would be maybe a less desirable site or layout or neighbor than what we hope to be. So I don't know if that I've answered any questions. If there certainly are questions, be glad to speak to it. But like I said, it's a project that is a bit unique, because when you use words like warehouse, you don't normally think barn and silo. And you know, when you think print shop, it's really more office space and copiers. I don't know if you can. No, that's just the questions.
Any questions from members of the board?
What's your current employment at the site?
Don't quote me on this, Ken, but I want to say it's definitely over 100. I think we are right around 110 employees at the Worcester property.
Okay.
Be about 165 worldwide, but we would have about 110, 2 international, and then or 3 international, and then the balance would be scattered across the country in home offices.
Okay, and all of these uses do occur right now across the street. This is just really expanding the footprint on a little bit more land, basically.
Correct. And one of the things we do today is we shuttle quite a bit of inventory between one of the warehouses here in the county, and they transport inventory up to us. We have deliveries dropped off at them. So if anything, this would allow us to have ultimately less trucks, because we would be able to take a full delivery and not have to shuffle goods between. But you are correct, Ken. All of the functions we're proposing are occurring today to the south of Riffle on our current corporate headquarters.
Yeah, I'm just saying that because it is very unusual, warehouse and printing. This doesn't look at all like what you would talk about.
Sure. I said we're a marketing company.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
I think the architects and the builders are all like, wait a minute, you're wanting to build a barn, but you want to use it like a storage facility with some printing. Yeah, that would be correct.
Brent, with expanding your campus across the street, your current campus is really nice and all contiguous. And now you're going to have a piece across the street. Do you envision any pedestrian crosswalk or something like that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Stuart. We had originally, today with the use of our culinary center, we had approached the city and received approval to put in a crosswalk between the culinary center, kind of that gray building there that sits a little bit to the west, and the Hampton, so that our guests could walk safely between the hotel and the culinary center. That was a crosswalk that was approved. We chose not to put that in. While it would be nice, we thought the greater priority would be to put that crosswalk down closer to the corporate headquarters where it meets with the new property, and reserve that area rather than 2 crosswalks on Riffle. We thought might be a little bit too aggressive. And so to kind of sit tight, but all indications are they would allow us to then put that crosswalk in down closer to where the parking and the corporate headquarters would meet.
That seems very sensible.
Thank you.
Other questions from the board? Is there anyone else on the meeting to speak regarding this application?
And Stuart, I do have one comment on YouTube there.
Okay, well, I was just going to then say now we'll open it up to the public.
Okay, sorry.
Nope, fair enough. You're keeping me straight. So let's go ahead and open it up to the public. And are there any others who want to speak for or against this application?
And from Lisa Seward Perry, you might have touched on some of this, but maybe just reiterate. She's at 4393 Hunters Chase Lane. Is it possible to hear what type of business this is? What is being printed / stored there? How much traffic is in and out, etc.? Where will entrances be, etc.? So maybe if you could, Brad, maybe you could just reiterate some of those things.
No, be glad to. So in terms of what we store there, I would say today it's probably somewhere around a third to a half of just printed flyers, marketing brochures, things of that nature. If you think about what you would see if you walked into a Bueller's today, the branded case dividers, the labels on the package, maybe a sign, the hats that the meat department staff would be wearing. And then when you look into some of our consumer line, it would be things like cutting boards, steak knives, wine glasses, things of that nature that consumers might choose to purchase from us. So we're talking mostly household products or printed merchandising type products, nothing of any chemical nature, nothing that would be hazardous or anything of that nature. In terms of traffic, as I mentioned, we are a business that operates 8:30 to 5. So we are not typically allowing trucks in there before 8:30 or after 5. There would be no one there to unload them. So all of those are scheduled between office hours. So we're talking about kind of normal daylight business hours. Truck traffic would typically consist of maybe 2 or 3 semis a week. A few box trucks maybe coming in from some of our label suppliers and things, not necessarily all full trucks and containers. Staff would use it as a drive, but most of those would be pulling into the west off of Riffle. They would turn and park to the east of Riffle. But again, we're going to see the normal traffic of around 8:30 in the morning coming to work, leaving at 5, and maybe running out to lunch if staff are leaving the office to go to lunch. So we're probably talking about what I would say minimal disruption. And again, if anything, I think we remove the issue of trucks today backing up on Riffle and having to back into our property like they do today. All the functions would basically be the same. I see, Lisa, a question about the noise and the loading dock. Again, that is so that a truck can back up there. We're talking about once or, probably on average once a day, maybe 3 or 4 times a week. That are typically there. You're not using, air brakes or anything of that nature. So I think the noise would be no different than what we have today across the street. Again, if anything, being able to back up to a dock, there's actually foam dock plate and things. So if anything, any noise that would be there, unloading or whatever, would be minimal. And again, we would put a nice sound buffer between Hunter's Chase and here, with the tree line and shrubbery and landscaping to even further minimize any of that sound carrying into the residential neighborhood.
And again, Lisa's follow-up comment was, what can we expect about noise, especially with the loading dock on the west side of the building? So.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, Andrew, that I guess that's what I was speaking to. Even though that's where the dock is, minimal contact, minimal amount of trucks. I'd argue with the sound block that we would propose along that side of the property really should be, if anything, no different than what they're experiencing today to the west.
And I think, Brent, her other question was, where's the entrance to the building? And I think looking at your diagram, that's off of Riffle Road.
Yes, that would be correct. So the turn-in would be off of Riffle, and the entry for staff going into the building would basically be through, if you can pull up the colored one, I think I like that one so much better. You can see there that the entry into the building would be through the front appearance, basically the front door and or the silo. So the double doors there that's kind of rendered, that could be the staff entrance and or the silo. So it kind of connects through that front office space, what looks like the kind of the milking parlor in a barn setting where you might have your milk tanks and your milking stations along that front. That's really where your office space is, and then the silo connecting through to that. But yes, all the entry would be off of Riffle.
Andrew, is there a follow-up from the questioner?
No, I don't see any further comments from the YouTube section there.
All right. Anything further from the board? All right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I would move approval of the application as presented.
Okay, thank you, Ken,
I would second.
and thank you, Mark. All right, voting in the affirmative on BZA 2007. Ken,
I'm voting yes. I think the evidence that was presented is convincing that this is not the typical warehouse and or print shop, but it's simply a moving of a function that was already in the office part across the street. And I think the variances having to do with windows and that relate more to standard office space. And this is a unique expression of the logo of the company. And I can see this in a lot of advertising, this barn with the sign. So I think it's a good way for the company to express itself, but it doesn't injure the neighborhood at all.
okay, thank you, Ken. Mark,
I'm also voting yes on, in regards to the setback variance. I think that, as Brent mentioned, the topography of the parcel and the shape of it, it makes more sense for the building to be where it is proposed. And for the use, I think that since all the functions are already occurring, this actually may alleviate some of the traffic and stresses that are already in that area.
okay, Brad,
I'm going to vote yes. And then specifically on the review criteria sheets for both the use and the area variance. So for the area variance, letter H, use variance, letter G, which focus on spirit and intent of the code. I think that we very well could have seen a plan for a structure go in with permitted use, and it didn't fit with the character of that neighborhood, and it didn't blend well with the residential area that's right next to it. I believe that the design, including the design of the building and the functions included in it, are within the spirit and intent of the code. It will blend nicely. And I agree with the point that was made in the application that it does set the tone for the future development of the rest of those parcels in that area. So for those reasons, I'm going to vote yes.
okay, thank you, Brad. And last but not least, Doug.
Well, I think it's pretty much been covered, all the notes I have, and so I'm voting yes.
And I too will vote yes. I think that the discussion has been very good on this, in that the situation on the north side of Riffle Road is a little bit unusual, with the Hunters Chase development being sandwiched in between commercial development on both sides. And so I think this is a very nice way of buffering Hunters Chase from future development. And I guess the other thing that I see from the discussion is that really this is just an extension of the certified Angus beef campus from across the road, extending it across the road. And so I think it makes very good sense. And as earlier cited by my colleagues, it's consistent with the spirit and intent of the code. So with that, your application is approved.
Well, thank you all very much. And thank you for the public comments from our neighbors at Hunters Chase. We will do our absolute best to continue to be great neighbors. And Alex, thank you so much for all the work you did and putting together that rendering, and all the work, John, that you did as well to make sure that it's engineered. And we're excited to move forward with this project just as soon as we're able to. So thank you all very much.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, next up we have BZA 2008. Is there anyone to speak on behalf of this application?
Yes, this is Eric Mitchner. My address is 225 North Market Street. I'm here on behalf of Pilata Industries. I also have with me Mike Pilata.
Okay, and your affirmation to tell the truth?
I apologize, and I affirm to tell the truth.
All right, please go ahead.
Gentlemen, this is a application for a variance of two specific planning and zoning code sections, 117.03D1A and 117.03D2. Both deal with lighting, and the one deals with cutoff lighting, requiring it to be at a 90-degree angle. The other just lighting that basically gets onto other people's property. Essentially, this is just a very simple request to allow us to continue to have our lighting at an angle that's not 90 degrees. This property is used by the property owner for one of its affiliates to store cars. I'm sure most of you are aware of Pilata Ford. And in order to protect its affiliates' assets, it needs to have very bright lighting in that area to cover the parking lot. I'm not sure if some of you know, but just in the last couple of days ago, there was basically people trying to break in and steal cars all throughout the city, including at our lot. This kind of lighting, which is very bright, helps to deter that kind of criminal behavior. We have had lighting that has not been 90 degrees in that area, not necessarily in the exact location where the current lighting that's not at 90 degrees is, but in other parts of the parking lot, in order to, again, provide the lighting necessary to protect those vehicles and to deter criminal behavior. If I could go through some of the, and we have provided pictures that kind of show what this looks like, and what the angle that we're talking about here is really, it's a variance of between 107, 110 degrees instead of 90. These aren't straight up and down like 180 degrees. In terms of whether there are special conditions that exist, just the, I would say, again, because of the value of the property that we're talking about, this inventory of cars, it's a little bit different than your regular commercial business in terms of trying to keep people off the property by shining bright lights there. Is whether the question will yield a reasonable return. I don't think that necessarily applies, other than not having this variance is going to impact the ability to effectively secure that inventory and make sure that it's not damaged. See whether it's the minimum necessary. Again, the angling and the way the lights are set, is what we believe we need in order to have lighting that's going to protect the owner's property and maintain its affiliates' dealership operation. The fact that the neighborhood, will this change? This is in a commercially zoned area. All throughout this part of the road, there are car dealerships. Having bright lights there is something that, frankly, all the dealerships around there have. And as you'll just kind of talk about this a little later, but in fact, some of them you can see from the pictures currently have lighting that's not at 90-degree angles. The real issue here is there's a residential property that is about 1,500 feet away. And if you look on the exhibit that we provided, the overhead map, you can see that this is quite some distance from where these lights are. And that from what we can tell now, there was a complaint by somebody in that neighborhood that the lights were too bright. What you'll see on that picture, though, is, I mean, this is not a residential property that is, directly next to where the lighting is. And in fact, if you look at the next exhibit and you see what the lighting looks like from that neighborhood, you can see that it really isn't that bright, at least when you're taking it with a normal lens. There are other pictures that were provided by, I believe it was Carol Lance, that showed the lighting was much brighter than that, or according to her at least her camera. The problem is, again, if you look at her even exhibit 4, if you're not zooming in on it, if you're just looking at her exhibit 4, it's the same. I mean, this is not that bright lights that are coming onto the neighborhood. Now, obviously, if you get closer or if you zoom in on the lens, you'll be able to see that there is light that comes. In particular, the staff picture taken from the sidewalk, when you're up and close there, you can see light through those trees, but if you'll notice, even that light is not really on the houses. This is, again, we're asking for a variance from the 90-degree angle because we believe we need the lighting in order to protect our business interest there. And frankly, if you look at the code, I'm going to go back here, if I could, to whether this will substantially alter or joining properties will suffer detriment. The actual, what this is going to do is it's going to prevent theft in the area. These lights have helped to prevent vandalism and theft and will continue to do so in the neighborhood. It will not, obviously, as number E says, affect governmental services at all. If you look at number F, you know, you could make the argument here that we created this because we put in the lights. It really, it was in February 2020 that we installed these lights, but really, like I said before, lighting at these angles was there before on various parts of the property. The difference is that we, in order to save on wattage, installed LED lights. Admittedly, they are a little brighter, but that allowed us to cover more of the parking lot and make sure it was safe. Again, can we solve this problem other ways? Again, we believe this is lighting that we need in order to protect our property. So changing the angle won't necessarily, you know, solve the problem because we're still going to need lighting, whether it's at a slightly elevated angle or whether it's at 90 degrees to provide lighting for the cars, make sure that we protect the parking lot. The one number H, I would like to focus in on that just for a minute. You look at the actual language where this lighting statute is, 117.03A, it says that it's the provision is to prevent light pollution in the forms of light, trespassing, glare, and to preserve and protect and enhance the character of the city and the lawful nighttime use and enjoyment of property located within the city. Again, the whole idea here is we want to protect the character of this area, promote lawful use of the area by preventing people from coming onto the property, causing vandalism and theft. Where number I, whether granting the variance request, it will confer on the applicant any special privileges that is denied by this regulation to other lands. We provided in the exhibits quite a few exhibits, pictures from, if you look exhibit 5 on, that show car dealerships throughout the city, some on Cleveland Road, some just short distance from this area that have lighting that's not at 90 degrees. This is something that you need with a car dealership. You need to have lighting that's going to be a little brighter and it's going to be not necessarily at a 90-degree angle in order to protect inventory. So that rather than giving us a special privilege, this would actually just put us on the level with other people throughout the city. Obviously, you know, whether they've been granted officially or unofficially, this is kind of the way that business has been done with regard to these businesses who are operating car dealerships. A literal interpretation, would it affect our rights commonly held by others? Again, I think it would, because these other dealerships are able to protect their assets and protect their cars through adequate lighting by using lighting that's not necessarily at a 90-degree angle. May I answer any questions?
Yes, I've got one. When you change The February project, was it just changing light bulbs or was it actually changing the fixtures?
Yeah, go ahead.
This is Mike Galata, 4199 Cleveland Road, firm to tell the truth. The, because the old fixtures, we went with new heads. They're, I think they're called bull heads that were well, almost 180 degrees, but there's all new lighting because of, you couldn't just change the inside of the lights. It had to be a whole new fixture. Took it then from a halogen type bulb to LED.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Other questions from members of the board?
I have a question. Has it been looked into at all if you would be able to, using the 90-degree standard, just add more light fixtures to the property to cover the same amount of area?
To add more lights?
Yes, but put them at the 90 degrees to cover the same amount of lighted area without having as much light leave the property.
Well, the area we're talking about, the lights in question, are the ones along Cleveland Road, and there are more lights there than even the back of the property. The back of the property has 4 lights. The front has, I'd have to count those, but there's probably 8 to 10. So all along back in 1986 or 87, when the Matthews owned it, there were multiple poles put up in the front versus the back for the lighting.
I had a question. I just wanted to clarify something that you had mentioned in your presentation. Did I understand you correctly that you said that not too long ago, even with all of this lighting you had, you did have some of your cars that were tried to be broken into?
That was just a few days ago, correct? They were unsuccessful. I think, again, the deterrence factor here. It is a problem, is our point. There was a rash of those the other night. It's not so much, obviously, that lighting is foolproof. It's that there's obviously a real need to try to deter people. And anybody who, as a prosecutor for 11 years, when you have lighting, it's a deterrent. It's one of those things where people commit crimes, usually easy marks. Darkness is what they like to operate in. That's why people have lights. I mean, it's the same if you think of a home, you walk up and the light comes on, that kind of a thing, or having lights outside your house, it's to help protect them.
And the vehicle that the glass, because all they did was break the glass of one, we had no vehicle stolen, is on the east side of the property, which only has 2 old style, what they call wall bank or wall type lights, I'm not sure, and then 1 bullhead.
Certainly. And I understand, the need for light versus no lights at all. I just want to make sure that I understood what you were saying correctly.
Okay, yeah, whatever. You hope we can answer any questions you have, yeah.
Would it be fair to say that the LED lights are more intense than the prior versions, being halogen or whatever?
Oh, yeah, Stuart, it would, LED, no matter what type of LED you have. I mean, if you're talking wattage, it's a lot less wattage, but the LED, I guess they call them lumens, would be brighter than a halogen light if you were to take 400 watt to 400 watt, or I don't know the lumens calculation. The light, as you can see, is bigger.
Yeah, but I guess that just, my perception has been, being a driver, that as more LED headlights have come on the road, that the intensity is oftentimes substantially brighter.
No, I would agree that the LED light is brighter because of, I think, probably the clarity more than anything, the blue light versus a halogen yellow light.
Other questions from the board?
So if this is Doug Macmillan. Question. So when I look at a couple of these pictures, it's where the power lines go through that create, where they have to cut everything down, just creating the view from this neighborhood. Is that what I'm understanding? From the above map is where this
Yes.
Carroll lives? Okay.
I would agree.
And but it seems clear to me that, you know, with some trees added to the back of the lots there, it wouldn't be the same problem that we're talking about, because it looks like it's off the path of the power line. I'm not sure I understand. Hard to tell from that picture.
I understand what you're saying. You're thinking about a possible solution would be to plant some trees along kind of the back of the lot that would kind of
well, I'm not necessarily saying
some of
your
the
lot.
light, or
I'm not necessarily saying your lot, but their lots. I mean, I can't tell by the picture. Are they? I mean, did they? And I'm not.
yeah, I understand what you're saying. I think
I'm not.
I think
asking
you're
you to
right.
do it. That wasn't my question. My question
Right.
more is, this person could find some relief by putting up a few bushes of their own.
I believe that is correct. Yes.
Thank
And
you.
one of the things on Stratford, it doesn't, when you're looking at this aerial, from the back of our property, almost all the way to Stratford, that actually is a very deep gully. It's not flat land. So I don't know, depending on that person, I'm not sure how deep their property is, but that where that right of way is for the towers, that is, it's quite deep ravine there.
Andrew,
Thank you.
can you put the map back up, please, so we can see that?
Yeah, I was trying to get a little bit better of a map here for you. Give me a second here. Clear. If y'all can see that, but the subject site, side of Cleveland Road. Well, the stream here would be the ravine. And then the power lines kind of go at a 45-degree angle.
Right. Okay, and this is helpful because the roads are labeled. Okay, thank you, Andrew.
Sure.
Well, when I look at that, I see a cutout behind the homes. Maybe the power company could put, looks like there's a cutout of trees that looks unnecessary if I'm reading this right. Anyway, okay. Thank you.
Andrew, I have a question. Have there been any other commercial developments along Cleveland Road done recently? The only one I'm familiar with is the dentistry center there further down, their parking lot. Do they have shielded lights in that parking lot? And what about anything else planned along Cleveland there?
I believe they do in the dentist parking lot.
Because when you go by there, it seems to stay on the property.
There is there's a project actually for Nagy's for their a little bit south of Smithville Western Road. I'm not sure.
Oh, yes.
I don't know if there's any new lighting going in there though.
Okay, the one that it's just the buildings going up and the new parking lot. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, the detailing shop.
Because I guess my only question is, if we're still enforcing that, the down lighting, the shielded lighting for everybody else, I don't quite understand why, this property has to go to what the non-conforming uses are on the other side of the street.
I would note that for instance, Rite Aid, if you look at their lighting, which is a more recent, they've been installed, is not 90 degrees. The lighting that's at the Dollar General that's new is not 90 degrees. I think RVs, I think there's been quite a few recently installed lights. It just depends on what the lighting is needed for. And I would say if you look at other uses in the community, particularly auto dealerships, that's why there needs to be more light because of this safety and concern.
Yeah, looking at the code though, is it looks like that the relevant issue is the overflow of light into residential areas from commercial areas. So I'm not sure that some of your examples necessarily have the same issue.
Well, I would agree, other than I would note that some of these areas are in areas where there's residential property, Dollar General is certainly abuts commercial property, as well as, Arby's is next to a residential area. I would also note that this is 1,500 feet away from a residential area. So it's not really a budding. This isn't like we have lighting that is shining into somebody's window, 50 feet away. This is somebody's looking off in the distance that can see some bright lights.
And again, is it fair to say that what brought this on was the change from older style lights to more intense LEDs in February of this year?
That would be what you could surmise. Unfortunately, I don't really know, other than I think what brought it on was somebody was, complained. I can't say that. I don't know. They're not here to explain whether it was that sudden change or not.
I believe that was the case, yes.
So Andrew, is there anything in the code regarding, presumably a lot of the lighting in the city is pre-zoning code. So you get into a grandfathered situation. Is there anything with lighting that causes the loss of that grandfathered status?
And basically anything that's existing is grandfathered in as is, but once you make a change, it has to meet the current code. And that's what happened here. If it was previously not full cutoff, when you change the light fixture, it needs to meet the current code.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
I have a question. So how far off the property does the present lighting we're talking about shine? I mean, it's 1,500 feet or 1,500 feet, which to me is a pretty good distance. How far is when it shines down, does it come off of the property? I mean, is it like 25 feet, 50 feet?
Is that directed to me?
No, well, I was directed at, whoever there, talking about the property. In other words, when it's lit up, how far is it coming off the property, or is it still on your property, just not on the driveway or on the parking lot area?
No, I mean, we have
from the
lights.
picture- Yes.
No, the lights, so the property that's the lower level, there are lights on all four sides.
Yes.
So there's lights on the front, which has more light poles on the back. So it points in every direction because there is no light pole in the center of the lot itself. And that's what houses, you've got just short of, well, let's just say 200 new vehicles down there. It's probably 180 right now, but there's no pole in the center. So the lighting shines from all four directions.
Okay, but my question is, if you had to say, I mean, your property goes beyond the parking lot itself, correct?
It just
I'm
on
talking
the,
about just the back now, just the back.
yeah, no, it just, we just have the back lights, the east side lights, there's another 25, let's just say 40 feet, and then it drops off to the ravine. That's where our land ends.
Right. And so essentially though, if I was to go out and look right now with it, where it is facing, it's still the lights on your property. It's not
Right,
really
it's not
like
bleeding
a
over.
flashlight named it up towards their house, right?
Correct.
Is that what I'm understanding? Okay.
Yeah, no, it stays on a property. I mean, there's probably 20, 30 feet, that 40 feet you could see, but it's not that it ricochets off the ground and reflects up.
Sure. Thank you.
All right, any further questions from the board for our appellants? All right, Andrew, let's go to the public hearing and ask if there are any others to speak for or against this application.
And I do have a couple of comments already. One is from a letter received today from Jeremy Mitchell, an agent for Melrose Village Mobile Home Park. It states UHM Properties Inc. objects to the variance request due to the availability of full cutoff lighting. Feel the lighting plan can be easily revised to avoid shining light towards a residential area. And then we've got some comments from you two. Let me try to get the screen sharing here. Kind of combination of question and comments from Carol Lance, who you also have an email and the accompanying pictures from Mrs. Lance there. But she asked, is there less damage or theft since installing the brighter lights? The intensity and angle of the lights are interfering with the back of my house and yard, dusk to dawn. Not plant trees in the tower right away. The lighting is above the ravine, and the light does shine into my window. Then we also have some comments from Dave Singling at 1414 Springwood Drive. We noticed a significant change in the intensity of the lighting and would question why the brightness position / angle cannot be better adjusted to limit their illumination to the surrounding area. We own 17 acres directly to the southeast.
Gentlemen, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, I think, again, none of this lighting is directed off of the property as was talked about. Whenever you have lighting like that, no matter what angle it's on, it's going to be bright. And what you're seeing there, I think, in those pictures is bright lights because you're lighting up the parking lot. In terms of can't plant trees under the tower or the right of way, I'm really not sure what that's about, other than I think the other commentator from the board member was just that you could plant something on your own property, but that's not what we're necessarily requesting or think somebody has to do. We just don't believe again, if you look at the pictures, the intensity of the lighting is not particularly that great from that distance. It's not shining a light on that property. Even if you look specifically at the inspector's own photograph, the lighting that's coming off there does not shine directly onto the property. You can see it off in the distance, but it's not. It's just not there. But you guys can see that better, just as well as I can. In terms of it is the lighting is more intense. I think we've talked about that. It is brighter, but that's to protect against theft. I can't quantify, since we've done that, it's stopped. Although I think if you listen carefully, what was talked about today is that, in fact, in the area where there isn't adequate lighting is where the criminals went just the other night. So obviously I think that demonstrates that lighting, adequate lighting in the area that we currently are talking about is necessary.
Andrew, any further comments out there?
I have not received anything further. We might want to give it maybe 30 seconds or so to catch up with the lag in case somebody's typing or something like that.
Okay, we can certainly do that.
All right, and Dave has asked, why not reduce the wattage of the LEDs?
The wattage of the LED is reduced from what we had originally. Remember the old lights.
can't type in this.
Yeah, so I guess, Mike, to clarify what you said earlier, you're using less power, but you have brighter lights. So
That's correct.
So I
Yeah,
think
I
you
mean,
might
you're,
rephrase the question, could you reduce the brightness?
well, then you'd get away from an LED light. And then that's the whole piece that Ohio Edison was pushing is the rebate program for LED lights.
Yeah, I don't believe you can just
Yeah, you can't just
tone it down. It's not that kind of a situation where you can just take the existing lights and tone them down. I would also note that part of the issue is trying to create enough light to protect the property. I think, and so yes, you can always have less light, but then you run into the problem of increased. You're not solving the problem of why you have light.
Right. Yeah, I don't think, at least I wouldn't argue with the need for lighting to protect the inventory. I think that's, pretty self-evident that otherwise, cars are a great target along with anything else that sits outside at night. But I guess the question I would have, just from my own experience, so this is an N of 1, is the light may not get to the property 1,500 feet away. But if you're looking out a window and you've got the source of the light pointed at you, aren't you going to get the effect of looking into a light? Does that make any sense?
I understand what you're saying. Yes, it's just that I don't think that that's what's going on here. Again, if you look at the pictures, this is not a situation where you have these lights that are angled at these houses. If you look at the pictures, and what we're talking about is angles that are like this. That's not angled like, where it's directed towards those houses. So I just, why I think that's possible, I just don't think that fits the facts here.
Well, although if you look at the code requirement for a full cutoff light, where you would have the angle, I'll try to get on my picture here, where you'd have it at, full 90 degrees, then you'd have all the light production going down instead of having, even at an angle, having the light potentially be seen from a distance.
I respectfully might disagree with that, in that even, it's not just because we're not talking that severe of an angle. I don't think if it's 90 degrees, that would still prevent there being light you could see from a distance. I think the light you're seeing there from a distance is because you have lighting, whether it's angled down or not. The angling 90 degree down just means that it's not going to, the total area is not going to spread out as far, but you're still going to be able to see that light, from a far distance because it's high off the ground.
And Mrs. Lynch just commented, if you can't tone down, can you change the angle? And I think the commissioner kind of just responded to that.
Yeah, so are you saying that the angle can't be changed?
No, I'm simply saying I don't think that would solve the concern, because I don't believe that, again, to get the right amount of light, the angle that's been changed there is just allowing more light on into the parking lot itself. It's really not shooting over. And so I don't think that when you're talking about, like, if you look off in the distance, you can see that light, it seems like it's coming at you. I don't think the 90 degrees would solve that.
Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, though. If even if changing the angle to 90 degrees wouldn't solve that, they wouldn't need a variance if the lights were at 90 degrees, correct?
I think for the most part, changing it to 90 degrees would meet the code. That's basically all you can do at that point is face it straight down. Yeah.
The only thing I would note is that and again, there are two parts to this. One is light that's being shined somewhere on other property, or having light pollution on some other property. And the other is 90 degrees. I guess what we're saying is we believe that the slight variation in angles is not causing there to be light pollution. So changing to 90 degrees, I don't think would solve a problem that we don't think is there.
Okay, are there any further questions from members of the board?
Stuart, there's one more comment in the, I'm putting it in here right now.
That was going to be my next question, Andrew, is are there any further comments from the public?
And Carol Lance is commented. We've always seen the lights, but never this bright. The change is very noticeable. That was the last comment.
Okay. Andrew, should we give it another minute or two on the comments?
About the elevation of Cleveland Road being higher than the elevation.
If I could just point out in kind of relation to that comment,
ahead.
that they've always, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, they've always seen the lights. One of the issues here is that the elevation of Cleveland Road is much higher, and so you're going to see those lights. I would agree with that.
Yeah, the only last thing was Dave Stenglen agrees with that, with Carol's comment.
Can I still ask you a question?
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
What time do the lights come on? Are they automatically come on after dusk?
Yeah, they're on a timer. They come on, well, right now they'd be coming on at probably 8:30. And then I'd have to see what time security lights, I've got to check with the security lighting, what banks stay on. I don't know the number of the lights that stay on. I'd have to ask the electrician on that, or drive by there at night, so.
Okay, anything further from the board? All right, Andrew, anything further from the public?
No.
All right, hearing nothing further, I'll entertain a motion.
Carol has noted dusk till dawn, 12 lights. Sorry, just came in.
I'm sorry?
Carol Lance has noted dusk till dawn, 12 lights. It just came in.
Okay,
And I think we should
thank you.
probably close the public hearing officially.
All right. I think we'll officially close the public hearing so the board can proceed. I'll entertain a motion from the board either for executive session or to act on the request.
I move that we accept this motion or this applicant as written.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Brad. All right, we have a motion and a second to approve 2008 as presented. Voting in the affirmative. Doug?
I struggle with this because I do believe that when people have a problem with it, but I understand lighting is a very important deterrent to vandalism and crime. And I see this distance as a great distance, and it seems to me that a big part of the problem is the power line that runs through there, and they're chopping everything down. I'm going to vote yes.
Okay, thank you, Doug. Brad?
like Doug, I went back and forth because I understand the need for security. I also understand being a resident, having that light coming in. But again, I have to fall back to the distance between the properties. And so in that entrance, I go back to what's been presented. And so I feel that it meets the criteria that I'll vote yes.
Okay, thank you, Brad. Ken?
I vote no. Primarily for the reason that had they left the 90-degree cutoff lights and just changed the type of bulbs, regardless of how bright it was, that would have met the code. I don't find any justification for doing two changes and expecting us to approve it.
Okay, thank you, Ken. Mark?
I will also vote no. I will follow up with what Ken said. I understand that there's a need for security, but I think that the lights could have been placed at the 90 degrees. And at that point, regardless of the brightness, there would have been nothing anyone could do because they would have met the zoning requirements.
Okay, thank you, Mark. I too am going to vote no on this as well. I think that the project to change from prior types of lighting to the brighter LED lighting took away the grandfathered status under the code so that the angled fixtures are no longer permitted. I think there's a good reason in the code for the full cutoff lighting, as it's referred to, the 90-degree fixture. And I think it's there for a reason, to avoid exactly this kind of controversy at the borderline of commercial and residential areas. And I think, this is probably the prototype argument that we as a zoning board are here to hear. So again, I vote no, and therefore your application is denied. So thank you, gentlemen. Is there any further business to come before the board?
There's nothing else. I'd just like to thank, the board members and the applicants for, signing on for this type of format. Hopefully we'll get back to normal kind of next week or next month, hopefully. Or we can always just do this all over again.
Well, we can. Yes, I too appreciate that. I think actually it went very well. So thank you, everybody, for cooperation and participation. And I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
All right, by acclamation, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you all.
All right,
Thank
thanks,
you,
everybody.
everybody.
Okay.